stops, feel free to stand up whenever I come to a complete stop if you'd like. Just have a seat when we start to move again. If you have a medical emergency, many of you can get my attention by pressing and holding the solid yellow strips on the ceiling right below the pictures of the animals, unless you are in the very first car, in which case I have a window up here, tap on the glass, or have somebody do that for you if you need, for medical emergencies. So I know to stop the tram. I will come back and see what I can do to help you out. If you lose any personal items overboard, let me know at the end of the tour what you have lost and where. We will get that back to you as soon as possible. And as you look for the cheetahs to the right of the tram, take a few moments to silence any electronic devices you've brought with you, just for the duration of the tour. So we've got a couple of South African cheetahs in this very frontmost corner of their enclosure, which is also along the walking tour path. So I'm just going to go slowly past their environment, because you can come down here after our tour, spend more time with these two girls. But just take a moment and enjoy the views, notice what they are doing. You are looking at the fastest land mammals. These are cats that can go from 0 miles an hour to 60 miles an hour in 3.4 seconds. But they're not doing that. No, that takes a lot of energy. So of course they're not going to be running around all the time. What they are doing, however, is conserving their energy, and they're really, really good at it. Now, even though they are the fastest land mammal and they can go at those incredible speeds, they only do that when absolutely necessary. In the wild, it would be, of course, to catch their food. Here at the safari park, however, we do have an event called Cheetah Run, which is your opportunity to see that speed and acceleration for yourselves. Now, the incentive to run for the cheetahs that take part is chasing their favorite stuffed toy down a 100-meter long grassy track. And then at the end of that run, they do get a food reward, ground meat, part of their everyday diet. But it's simulating that natural behavior, the prey, drive, chase, something that moves. You see the focus, the determination. You see the cheetah go from 0 miles an hour to almost 60 in that run. It's pretty amazing. That happens at 3:30. It is free. You don't have to pay anything extra to show up maybe a little bit early. Now, right next door to the cheetah habitat is a lagoon habitat where the African greater flamingos are all pretty and pink, gathered together in their flamboyance. The largest flamboyance of the greater flamingos in a zoo setting in North America, with about 150 individuals. You can count them if you want to, see if they're all out. Sure, looks like it. They are incredibly social birds. This is a very small number compared to what you might see in the wilds. That could easily be 100,000, even 1,000,000 individuals. Yes, 1,000,000 flamingos all living together. Now, they're so social, they also welcome the company of some of our native species, the North American pelicans that are out there, some egrets, herons, ducks, all sorts of different animals. Because no matter if you're the same species or not, coming together, joining forces, the more eyes, ears, and your noses that you have looking out for you, of course, the better chances you have of surviving, yes? And that's what it's all about. It's all about survival. You've got to pass on those survivor traits to the next generation as well. But for many of the animals that we'll see along our tour path, that is becoming increasingly difficult. They face many different outside pressures, different challenges from humans that they haven't quite adapted to yet. So we'll talk about the different adaptations they do have to survive on their own. And along the way, I will also highlight some of the conservation work that the safari park is involved with, trying to help them out a little bit extra. Now, it's true on grounds, a lot of our conservation work involves having babies. We are a breeding facility. We started out as a breeding facility for the San Diego Zoo downtown back in 1969, and we were able to open up our doors to guests in 1972. And some of the locals that like to hang out here as well, the native species to the right of the tram, are overtaking the East African black rhino enclosure because the rhinos are taking a nap, so that means the mule deer are moving in for a short time. This is a bachelor herd of young bucks, young males, kind of walking around. You see their antlers sticking up like tree branches coming up off of their head. Those antlers are actually made of bone, calcium. Right now they look brown and fuzzy because they are covered in a layer of skin with very short, fine, soft hairs. And as they are growing, those antlers are pulling all sorts of nutrients, calcium, and minerals from the animal's own body to put it up into those antlers. So by the time mating season comes around, which is later on in the fall, they are fully developed, ready to show off to the ladies. Generally, the larger the antlers, the more food that individual has found. So it's a bit of a fitness indicator. Even the native species have these. They can show off to the females that might be nearby. Look at these antlers, they're big and strong, and that means I've got a lot of good food, and I'll show you where that food is. Just come and hang out with me. So you've got to find that food. You've got to avoid predators. It's all about survival. Now just to the left of the tram, getting back to Africa, we have some rather large birds along the far left shoreline in this front corner, kind of congregated together. Large white birds. Those are the great white pelicans, a few Dalmatian pelicans as well that have a bit more gray color. They look a little dingy, like they might need a bath. That's just the color of their feathers. Enjoying the sunshine on that shoreline, but they do have their own private island, as you can see in the middle of the water. Nice safe place for the great white pelicans and Dalmatian pelicans to build their nests, lay their eggs, and raise their chicks. Even though they could do all of that from the main shoreline, there are a few antelope coming down to this water feature to take a drink and cool off, and that's a common scene. There could be a lot of foot traffic around the edge of this pond. It is the beginning of a 60-acre enclosure, and a lot of antelope live in here. Some giraffe we will look for as well, but there could be a lot of foot traffic, and so of course the pelicans don't want to build their home in the middle of traffic. That's why they get their own private island. So sprawling out before us to the left is our version of the savannas of South Africa. 60 acres large, no walls, no fences, no barriers separating all the different animals from one another. They are free to interact with each other. They can completely ignore one another. It's a very natural environment, trying to encourage their natural behavior. And yes, that includes natural breeding behavior. But it's great because we do have a lot of babies born here. In fact, on average, there could be one birth per day here at the safari park. And if you are looking ahead of us and to the left, you might see some of those large brown antelope that were at the water's edge. Those are the Ellipsan waterbuck. You can get a closer view as we pull through this gate. A couple of babies in this herd. Some older babies, a couple of weeks old. Stronger, larger, able to come out to join the rest of the herd. They're little miniaturized versions of the adults. They have that thick brown shaggy coat, the elliptical white ring around the tail. You might see that. Pretty easy to see, by the way, even for the animals. So waterbuck making their their homes along the waterways where a lot of tall grass can grow. It's easy to lose track of one another. You're trying to follow each other through those taller grasses. You might lose sight, except for that white ring. You keep sight of that white ring, and you can follow one another. So that's actually what it's called, surprisingly, a follow me mark. Follow me. We're going this way. Look for the white ring, and we'll all stay together. Now getting away from the marshes and the waterways, we're moving further into the savanna, so a little bit different color on the animals, some shorter hair to keep them nice and cool in those very dry habitats. Light tan coloration for a very large antelope. The Patterson's eland, all gathered around the food here, enjoying a nice afternoon snack, yes. And then taking over the only grassy patch on this first sand flat, dark brown South African sable. Now just take a moment and notice the body position for these antelope. Normally we see something like this, we see people even facing away from one another, and you think, well, they don't like each other, do they? Body language, it can tell a lot about how people interact with one another, how animals interact, and looking at them with their backs to each other, you would think, well, they don't like each other at all. They're not even facing one another. And it's true, I mean, they do see each other every day, so maybe they just don't want to look at the faces of their herd mates, maybe. Or maybe not. Of course, there's safety in numbers, but if all of your eyes are facing the same direction, you can't all be taken by surprise. So they're forming what's called an alert circle, or alert formation. Back to back, eyes out. Everybody looks out for everybody else. You've got my back, I've got yours. And further out into the sandflies, just kind of taking over the sandy areas, we've got some baby Patterson Zealand here.
Oh, cute.
Slightly smaller than the adults. Walking across the sandflies. Now, the Patterson Zealand are not classified as an endangered species. They're actually considered to be a stable population, but we still obviously have babies. We still breed them here. And this is kind of a just-in-case scenario. Just in case anything were to happen in the wild, perhaps disease or famine were to reduce their numbers, we have a healthy reserve herd to build them back up. But that also means we need help with all of our breeding programs, the babies that are born here. Like I said, one birth per day on average.
Yeah, well, wait.
If we kept all of those babies, we would run out of room very, very quickly. We could also run the risk of inbreeding, never a good idea. So to maintain genetic diversity, for the health and well-being of all the animals born here, we work with other parks and other zoos around the world. And it's all governed by something called the Species Survival Plan. And some of those that are part of the Species Survival Plan are just up ahead of us. I'm trying to get us caught up to the tallest land mammals with their long necks and long legs. They are specifically designed to find food up high. And yes, they are, of course, good giraffe. There you go. Some of them are finding food in the feeder tree with a basket attached to it, but some of those more independent individuals say, no, I'll find my own food, thank you very much. And they're gathered around underneath the leaning tree. And as they are gathered underneath the leaves of the tree, they're using their spots to help them blend in a little bit. Blending into the shadows, hiding in plain sight. Sometimes it's easy to lose focus out there. You're concentrating so much on that food that's up above your head, you may not be paying attention to the world around you. Easy for predators to sneak up on these animals. So that's where the spots will help them out tremendously. Breaking up the solid outline of their bodies, also kind of helping them to blend into the shadows, those irregular shapes underneath the leaves of the trees. So even the giraffe want to hide every now and again.
Their toes are short.
And you might even see their tongue reaching even further up into the trees. They have a very long tongue on average. For every foot of height, they have 1 inch of tongue. So let's say you have a 16-foot tall giraffe. They might have a 16-inch long tongue, which means they can reach even higher, further up into the trees to find their food. That tongue is considered to be semi-prehensile, meaning they can grab onto things, like they can wrap that tongue around tree branches and leaves and pull that food into their mouth. Very much an extension, like we use our hands to grab onto things as well. But as we leave behind the savannas, ladies and gentlemen, we are moving up into our forest habitats, Central Africa. Leaving behind the dry environments, moving up into greener environments, greener grass, a few more trees. And if you take a look out to the left, all the way out to the left, over the rooftops, through the swallows swooping around, you might see a rhinoceros. See where that dirt road kind of curves around, goes back uphill. That is Angolito, a northern white rhinoceros, waiting for food. It says, you're trimming the trees, I love leaves, I just can't reach them, my head is so big, I can't pick it up over my shoulder, so please, drop a branch for me. While the giraffe are tree trimmers, they are designed to find food up high. The white rhinos are the lawn mowers. Their heads are so large, they weigh between 800 and 1,000 pounds, just for the head of this animal. They physically cannot lift it above their shoulders. They do have a very wide mouth, however. That could be how they got the name white and wide. Sound very similar. Maybe somebody was describing the mouth. There's a mispronunciation or miscommunication, but anyway, they are specifically designed to find food down low, the grasses from the ground. But of course, leaves from a tree would be an extra special treat for Escondido, the northern white rhinoceros. A few more animals taking notice of the activity. They're up at the top of the hill, so they have their own kind of advantage. They can see what's going on all the way around them. Are a few orange-colored antelope on the greener grasses. Now, fun thing to do to see how well that orange coat blends in and camouflages those Ugandan cob and even the chestnut brown roan antelope. Take a picture of these animals, and if you can, change that picture to grayscale, either on your cameras, your phone, or maybe even later on the computer at home. Change that picture to a grayscale and you will see how they disappear. Believe it or not, they are mimicking the color of their background right now, even though they don't have green hair. And I'll explain that when we get to the top of the hill. Nice breeze coming up off the pond. The pink-backed pelicans swimming around up here as well. And a closer look at some of the orange, rusty-colored antelope that live in this green environment. Now I know it may not seem like it makes much sense, right? Orange animals on a green background, that doesn't blend in at all. Those are two different colors. Yes, to us, to humans who have adapted to be active in the daylight. In our history, we have had to search for food, fruits and vegetables, a red apple on a green tree. We had to assess the ripeness of that fruit. So we developed color vision, but we sleep at night. We don't have very good night vision. Have you ever been walking around at night without light? Can't see anything. You bump into walls in your house, trip over furniture, it's a mess. That's because we are daytime active, but a lot of these animals, it's the opposite. They are nighttime active, so they can see in the dark much better than we can, but they don't have the color vision that we do. Same with their natural predators. Many of them are much more nighttime active, so they have to see in the dark to catch their prey. Their prey want to see their predators, they have to see in the dark as well, so they have better night vision than we do. But during the day, many of these four-legged mammals that we see are considered to be red, green, color blind. They can't tell the difference. It's the same color. And that's why I say if you take a picture of these animals and then change that picture to grayscale, you can see that, how that all works for ourselves. It's pretty amazing, like magic. They just disappear, melting into the background. So maybe, just maybe, if they sit down very still, very quiet, and the wind is just right, they might fool predators into thinking, I'm just a big clump of grass. There are no antelope here.
It's not drawn. I don't know what you're talking about.
So it all kind of depends on where they live. Those that live in those drier environments, the savannas and the deserts, want to stay cooler. They want to blend into that lighter background, so they sport a very light color. Up here in the forests, greener grasses, green leaves in the background, orange coats. You can kind of tell where an animal lives just based on its coloration. Really nice views up here, looking down all the way around what we've just driven past. some more individuals that have taken notice of the tree trimming activity. They're kind of concentrated up here in this front corner of their enclosure. All their black and white stripes. Maybe looking through some of the trees and the scrub brush here, you can see the Kodak zebra. We'll actually go around the corner and get a view of their room. Basically, they get their own room, their own fenced-off portion of the hillside, and we'll be able to see where they live. But that's the great thing about the park too. We have so much space available, 1,800 acres total. Now, not all of it is developed. A large portion is what you see to the right, undeveloped native habitat. But there is space enough to separate species when needed. Like all of us, they have their own personalities. As much as we would like all of those personalities to get along, they just don't do that necessarily. Some don't play well with others. But we can accommodate them by giving them their own room, like the Kodak zebra. I'll just pause for a few moments because it looked like the majority of the herd were at the very front, topmost corner. Hard to see from this distance, but actually a great example of how their stripes break up their solid outlines and kind of make them disappear. Then you got the one at the very bottommost corner underneath a dark green leafy tree. His tail is swishing. You might look for movement. Easier to see movement with these animals. But they do get their own room. There's no grass on that hillside simply because they ate it all. And that's what they do. They eat a lot. If you've ever been around horses, you know they eat a lot of food because they don't have a very efficient digestive system. So when they eat, a lot of the nutrition just kind of passes right through. It doesn't get absorbed into their bodies. So they eat more to make up for that. They can eat about half of their own body weight every single day just to get enough nutrition. That means they don't want to share their food with anybody. Sometimes not even each other, but they do have a hierarchy in their herd. They know who is in charge and who gets to eat first, who has to wait till later, so on and so forth. But a lot of the other animals we have seen so far are viewed as competition. And the Kodak zebra don't like competition. They've been known to bite and kick to try and keep the food for themselves. To avoid any unnecessary injuries that could occur with their competitive nature, they get their own space. And they get food every single day. Everybody's happy. It's a beautiful thing. Now, yes, in the wild, they do have competition. They have other wild animals. But more and more often, their competition is in the form of domestic livestock, like our horses, donkeys, and mules. A lot of people in the world right now, we're all moving around trying to find our way, bringing our domestic animals with us, trying to take care of them too. Nothing wrong with that. But when we come in direct conflict with the wild animals and put more pressure on their survival, that's, I think, where we need to find a way to help them out a bit, to relieve that pressure. And there are people out there willing to do that. We very much support the efforts of a non-profit organization called the Kodak Zebra Trust. They help out by building wells so there is more water available. They also help out by vaccinating domestic livestock nearby so they don't pass on diseases to the wild populations that can happen. They do many more things, and it's just one of the many conservation organizations that we work with around the world. As we're just passing through the upper part of the savannas, we're making our way back toward the East African field enclosure, and that's what we drove past in the very beginning of the tour. We've seen a lot of different animals already, some giraffe, a lot of antelope. We have about 70 different species of antelope in Africa alone. Some birds, some rhinos, the zebra. Pointing out the various different adaptations that they have, colorful adaptations, blending in, hiding in plain sight, behavioral adaptation, safety in numbers, that's always a good one.
Yeah, it's an avocado grove.
But like so many of them, like the Kodak zebra, who face increased competition with domestic livestock, many of these animals are having a hard time trying to adapt to us. So I think the more we can help them out, the better chance they'll have of surviving and It's nice to know there are people out there willing to help, like those that started the Grevy Zebra Trust. And here at the Safari Park, we are more than just a zoo. We are a conservation facility with a lot of our conservation work centered around having babies, like little plastic toys. It's pretty amazing. But here we are cruising around the East African field enclosures, and some more giraffe for you. Mostly Rothschild's giraffe, and there are a few caravan trucks in there amongst the giraffe. Now, fun thing to do for the caravan trucks as well, you get to possibly feed the giraffe. They do carry treats for these giraffe in Africa. So you have the opportunity to feed a giraffe. You get so close, you can count the whiskers on their faces. You can see yourself reflected in their beautiful brown eyes. Eyes, by the way, that could see something from about a mile away. So they're kind of the watchtowers of the savannas. And right now we've got a tower or a herd of giraffe watching over a female southern white rhinoceros and her cow. Yep, we've got a baby out here. Baby rhino. Now I'll stop here and then I'll pull forward, stop again a couple times, so hopefully we can all see this little guy. You see the main herd of giraffe around the tree stump. To the right of them on the ground, sleeping in the shade, is Mama. Rhino Casey is her name, and just to her left is the baby coyote. He kind of looks like a little rock until he flicks his tail and says, "No, I'm not a rock, I'm a rhino." He was born February 25th. So he is just 4 months old. Now, even though the southern white rhinos are the only rhinoceros species not on the endangered species list, we do still have babies. Obviously, we want to keep their numbers up as much as possible because they, like all rhinos, have to worry about one threat in particular, and that is the poaching activity, illegal hunting that still takes place to this very day, mostly for their horns on the end of their noses. Those horns are still used in many traditional Asian medicines, still believed to be able to cure everything from a fever to cancer, even though scientists have looked at these horns and studied them and discovered they are made of a protein called keratin. That is the exact same protein that grows off the top of our head. It's a hair fiber, a very dense, hard hair fiber that grows off the end of their nose, but that's all it is, nothing more, nothing less. Now, even though they are not on the endangered species list, they do still face the threat of poaching activity, so much so, as the numbers stand right now, we could see the extinction of the southern white rhinos, all rhinos really, in the next 20 years. That's how bad it's gotten, but we can help them out. I firmly believe that we, using our voices, speaking up on their behalf, we are their voices. We can share as much information as possible, get the word out there. We live in such an amazing age right now with information literally at our fingertips. And for me personally, I feel it would be such a tragedy to lose something so amazing as a rhinoceros who's been here since prehistoric times, when there is something that we can do to help them out. So whatever you're passionate about, I highly encourage you, get involved. I love the rhinos. I think they're just the most amazing creature out there. There's so many things about them that I find fascinating. But whatever you're passionate about, get involved, share that information. We have a lot of information to share here. If you want more information about what we do as far as all of our conservation work and the animals that we've been able to help out along the way,